The sound of designer heels on polished marble echoed, louder than the gunshot that should have killed him. Park Joon-ho woke to silence. Not the peaceful kind, the suffocating kind, the kind that presses into your skull and reminds you that something is missing. He tried to move. His right hand twitched. His left shoulder burned. His chest rose and fell. But below his waist, nothing. His legs lay under the hospital blanket, like someone else's limbs. Still, disconnected, foreign, a machine beeped steadily beside him. Expensive machine. Private wing. VIP suite. He recognized the ceiling panels. Imported Italian acoustic tiles. Even paralyzed, he noticed details. A habit of survival. The door opened softly. A doctor entered with the expression of a man preparing to deliver a sentence. "Mr. Park," he said carefully, "you're awake." Joon-ho swallowed. His throat felt like broken glass. "What happened?" "Car accident. Your vehicle went off Gangnam Bridge 3 nights ago." 3 nights. He'd been unconscious 3 nights. "We stabilized you," the doctor continued, "but there was significant spinal trauma. T12. L1. We performed emergency surgery." Joon-ho stared at him. "Meaning?" The doctor hesitated. That hesitation told him everything. "You have complete motor loss from the waist down." The words dropped like concrete. "Paralyzed." The man who ruled Seoul's underground with a whisper couldn't move his own legs. He stared at the blanket. They looked normal. Muscle intact. Tattoo of a descending tiger still stretched across his back beneath the hospital gown. A predator mid-pounce. Frozen forever. "How long?" Joon-ho asked evenly. "Until I walk again." The doctor didn't answer immediately. "Recovery is unlikely." Silence expanded. It swallowed the room. Joon-ho turned his head toward the window. Seoul glittered in the distance. His city, his empire, and he couldn't feel his toes. The divorce papers arrived before the flowers did. Kyung-mi didn't come in person. She sent a lawyer. Efficient, clinical, cold. The man stood at the foot of Joon-ho's bed, not quite making eye contact. "Mrs. Park requests your signature by end of business today." Joon-ho's lips curled faintly. "Requests?" The lawyer placed the folder on his legs. He felt nothing. She has already relocated. Relocated, while he was still learning how to breathe, without choking on morphine. "She's emptied the joint accounts," the lawyer added. "Transferred assets." The penthouse lease was in her name. Joon-ho said nothing. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "If you don't sign voluntarily, we will pursue mental incompetence claims given your condition." Condition, like paralysis, was contagious. Joon-ho stared at the ceiling. He had built his life on fear and precision. He taught men loyalty through consequence. He believed Kyung-mi understood the rules of power. He had been wrong. The lawyer clicked his pen. "Mr. Park?" Joon-ho closed his eyes. "You have 48 hours." The man left. The room felt smaller. The empire he built with blood and silence evaporated faster than morphine through veins. By the 3rd day, his phone stopped ringing. 200 messages a day before the crash. 0 now. His second-in-command, Kwon Ji-sung, visited once. He stood near the doorway like paralysis might infect ambition. "Joon-ho," Kwon said carefully, avoiding the word hyung. The council met. Joon-ho's jaw tightened. "And we voted." "On what?" "Interim leadership." Joon-ho let out a dry laugh. "Interim. It was unanimous." "Of course it was." Sharks smell blood, and he was bleeding. Kwon adjusted his tie. The Choi organization offered partnership terms. It stabilizes territory. "And Kyung-mi?" Joon-ho asked quietly. Kwon hesitated. "She's aligned with them." Aligned. The betrayal snapped into focus. The accident. The immediate asset transfers. The speed of the takeover. It hadn't been chance. It had been choreography. "You taught me," Kwon said stiffly. "Business is survival." Joon-ho stared at him. "And you chose to survive." Kwon didn't deny it. He left. Joon-ho lay alone. Paralyzed. Abandoned. Erased. That night, his hand drifted toward the morphine regulator. One small adjustment. The machine would do the rest. He had orchestrated cleaner exits for men who crossed him. He could grant himself mercy. Don't! The voice came from the doorway. He turned his head. She stood there, tall, dark-skinned, backlit by fluorescent hallway light. Dorothy Scott, his housekeeper. He had seen her 1,000 times. Never truly looked. Her uniform was simple. Light blue, pressed. Her posture was not. It was iron. Who let you in? Junho asked hoarsely. I let myself in. She stepped forward. No one else is stopping you from doing something stupid. Her eyes flicked to the morphine drip. Junho pulled his hand back. You don't know anything about me. Dorothy dragged a chair closer and sat, close enough to challenge him. I know your wife emptied your accounts. I know your lieutenant replaced you. I know you haven't slept. I know you're calculating how much morphine it would take to stop breathing. Her gaze did not waver. What I don't know, she said calmly, is whether you're a coward. The word landed harder than paralysis. Junho's eyes sharpened. Careful. No, she said evenly. You be careful. Silence stretched between them. You were dangerous when you were comfortable, she continued. When you had money men movement. Her chin lifted slightly. Now we find out who you are without them. Junho's pride flared. You're speaking to Park Junho. I'm speaking to a man in a hospital bed. She leaned forward. So which one survives? The challenge ignited something molten inside him. Not hope. Not yet. Anger. Pure, clean anger. What do you want? He asked. I want you to live. She stood. Tomorrow, 6 a.m. We start therapy. I can't pay you. I don't want your money. She paused at the door. I want to see if a king can survive without a crown. Then she left, and for the first time in days, Junho didn't reach for morphine. The next morning, she arrived with paperwork. Real paperwork. Liability waivers. Medical release forms. Power of attorney. You forged my signature. Junho said flatly, yes. She met his stare. Without flinching. You're coming home with me. Sunbukdong was nothing like Gangnam. No glass towers. No marble lobbies. No private elevators. Her apartment was small, warm, cluttered with books, photographs, memories. It smelled like coffee and vanilla. It smelled like someone lived there. Junho hated it immediately. It reminded him he had never built a home, only a throne. The first time he tipped his wheelchair trying to leave, she lifted him like he weighed nothing. No hesitation, no drama, just strength. Rage, all you want before 8 p.m., she told him calmly. After that, we work. He wanted to scream at her. Instead, he nodded. Lunch was kimchi jjigae, but different. There was cornbread beside it. Collard greens seasoned with sesame oil. Soul food meets soul food, she said. Junho took one bite. It tasted like childhood, like something he didn't deserve. You remembered how I cook, he said quietly. I remember everything in that house, she replied. He realized then she had always been watching, not with judgment, with care. That night, watching her move through her kitchen, Junho felt something crack deeper than pride. He had saved her son once. A quiet envelope, hospital bills covered. He barely remembered it. She had built a vow around it. Debt, loyalty, concepts he weaponized in business. She lived them. 2 weeks into therapy, his toe twitched. He said nothing. He didn't trust hope. 3 weeks. Sensation. A spark. Still he said nothing. He began documenting progress, secretly. Planning silently. Because if his legs returned, everything changed. And then, the night the window shattered. Flashbang. Gunfire. Dorothy moved like a soldier. Shotgun precise. Unshaking. Junho realized something terrifying. She had lived through war before him. When the final attacker raised his weapon, Junho stood. Pain like lightning tore through his spine. But he stood. He swung a cane. He fought. He survived. And when it was over, collapse, Dorothy held him. You stood, she whispered. And for the first time, he believed he might rise again. Junho did not celebrate the night he stood. He cataloged it. Pain level, catastrophic. Muscle response, unstable. Balance, compromised. Duration upright, approximately 3 seconds. But 3 seconds was more than zero, and zero was what the world believed him to be. The morning after the attack, Dorothy wrapped his spine in compression banding while he gritted his teeth through the aftershock of movement. "You overextended," she said clinically. "I survived." "You tore scar tissue." He didn't answer, because both were true. The Juju safe house overlooked the ocean. A modest 2-story structure registered under a shell corporation 3 layers deep. No neighbors within visible distance. Private access road. Satellite internet. Strategic isolation. Dorothy had already turned the downstairs room into a rehabilitation zone. Resistance bands. Parallel bars. Free weights. An old therapy table she'd insisted on having shipped overnight. "Again," she said. Junho gripped the bars. His legs trembled before he even attempted to stand. Pain shot through his lower back like a blade. But there was sensation now. Not phantom. Not imagined. Real. He pushed. His arms carried most of his weight, but his legs answered. Weak, unreliable, shaking, yet alive. He stood for 6 seconds. Collapsed into her arms. Dorothy caught him easily. She always did. "You don't get to skip steps," she warned. "I don't plan to." She met his gaze. Something unspoken lived there now. Not caregiver. Not housekeeper. Partner. The psychological shift. Junho's anger changed shape. It was no longer explosive. It was surgical. He began mapping the last 6 months of his empire's operations from memory. Revenue streams. Supply chains. Political favors owed. Weak points. Dorothy listened. Learned. Questioned. "You relied too heavily on intimidation," she observed one evening, reviewing ledger copies on her laptop. "It worked. Until it didn't." He didn't argue. She was right. Fear makes obedience. It does not make loyalty. And loyalty was what had vanished when his legs stopped moving. "Choi doesn't understand subtlety," Junho said, leaning back in his chair. "He'll overreach." Meaning, he'll try to prove dominance too fast. Dorothy nodded. "So we let him." Financial resurrection. They started small. A dormant import-export company in Busousan. A cash reserve hidden inside a freight insurance subsidiary. 3 offshore accounts Kyungmi never knew existed because Junho had created them before marrying her. Dorothy moved quietly, under her name, under newly created legal entities. She was invisible in their world. A woman in her 40s with a modest employment record and no criminal background. She could walk into a bank without alarms ringing. Junho stayed in the shadows, advising, planning, rebuilding. Within 3 weeks, they recovered 2.8 billion Korean wons in liquid assets, 2 properties in Jeju and Incheon, a small logistics fleet held through proxy registration. Not enough to declare war, enough to start pressure. The first strike. Choi Min-woo had one weakness. Ego. He loved public displays of control. He'd hosted a high-profile gala 2 weeks after taking over the Park Syndicate headquarters. Dorothy pulled up footage on the television. "Look," she said, Choi shaking hands. Politicians smiling. Kyungmi glowing beside him. Junho watched without expression. "He's consolidating influence," Dorothy continued. "But he's bleeding cash doing it. Of course he is. He doesn't understand internal cost structure." She leaned forward. "So we squeeze where he doesn't see it." Junho's eyes darkened slightly. "Yes." They began targeting supply routes. Not violently. Not visibly. Contracts redirected. Insurance claims triggered. Key distributors offered better margins through anonymous intermediaries. Within 10 days, Choi's revenue stream dipped by 12%. Subtle, but noticeable. Dorothy monitored news reports. Nothing public, but internal panic had begun. Junho could almost feel it. The confusion, the uncertainty. Good. Emotional undercurrent. Recovery accelerated. Parallel bars turned into assisted walking. Assisted walking turned into cane-supported steps. The first time Junho crossed the length of the room without collapsing, Dorothy clapped once. He hated how much that approval mattered. "You're staring." she said one evening. They were on the balcony. Ocean wind heavy with salt. Don't move like someone afraid, he said quietly. She considered that. I was afraid for years. Of what? Losing my son, losing stability, losing myself. She glanced at him. You! He didn't answer immediately. I was afraid of irrelevance. Dorothy studied him. And now, he looked at his hands. I'm afraid of losing you. The words came without calculation, without strategy, just truth. Dorothy didn't look surprised. She stepped closer. You won't, she said simply. He believed her, and that frightened him more than paralysis ever had. The suspicion. 3 nights later, Junho received encrypted confirmation. Choi had discovered financial irregularities. A private investigation had begun. We expected this, Dorothy said calmly. Yes, Junho replied, but we're not ready for direct confrontation. They needed one more phase, one more destabilizing event. Dorothy pulled up forensic banking logs. I found something, she said. Kyungmi had transferred 4.2 billion Korean wons into a Cayman structure. Sloppy timing. Rushed execution. They traced it through 4 intermediaries. It landed in a real estate acquisition tied to Choi's offshore gambling investment. Illegal. Highly illegal. Junho smiled faintly. This isn't revenge, he said. This is leverage. Dorothy nodded. And we're going to use it carefully. Physical breakthrough. It happened at dawn. Junho was alone in the therapy room. Dorothy still asleep. He gripped the cane, stood, and didn't tremble. His weight settled evenly. His spine held. He took 1 step, then another. No bars. No hands catching him. 10 steps. He stopped, breathing hard, but upright, alive. He laughed softly. Not the cold laugh of a syndicate boss. A real one. Dorothy appeared in the doorway, watching. You did that without me. Yes. She walked to him slowly. Show me. He did. 15 steps this time. When he stopped, she hugged him without warning. Tight, unfiltered joy. He wrapped his arms around her, felt her strength, her warmth, her heartbeat. 3 months, he whispered. I'll be fully mobile. Then what? He pulled back slightly. Then we go home. The plan finalizes. Step 1. Leak financial corruption anonymously to internal watchdog divisions within Choi's own political alliances. Step 2. Turn 6 of Junho's former lieutenants quietly. Step 3. Trigger legal scrutiny using documented offshore trails. Step 4. Public reappearance. Perfect timing. Maximum psychological impact. Dorothy adjusted her blazer in the mirror one evening. You nervous? He asked. No. She looked at him. You? Yes. He straightened his jacket. Good, she said. Means it matters. The call. Junho dialed Detective Kim. A quiet alliance forged years earlier. Information traded for operational blind spots. I have evidence, Junho said calmly. There was silence on the other end. Of what? Attempted murder, embezzlement, organized corruption. Choi. And my ex-wife. A pause. You ready to step back into daylight? Junho looked at Dorothy. She nodded. Yes, he said. I'm ready. The night before Seoul. The house in Jeju was quiet. Too quiet. Junho stood on the balcony overlooking the black ocean. No cane. No railing. Just balance. For months ago, he couldn't feel his toes. Now the wind pressed against his chest, and he held steady. Dorothy watched from inside. She didn't interrupt. She had learned something about him in recovery. He needed to measure moments alone before stepping into war. You're not shaking, she said finally. He turned slightly. Inside, yes. Good. She walked out to him. The wind lifted her hair. You've changed, she said. Because I had to. No, she corrected. Because you wanted to. That landed deeper than any insult. He stepped closer. I used to think fear was power. And now, I think control without loyalty is just delayed collapse. She smiled faintly. You're ready? He nodded. Tomorrow we return to Seoul. Seoul hears a ghost. They didn't sneak in. They flew private. Arrived after sunset. Gangnam glittered the same as always. But Junho wasn't the same man stepping into it. He wore charcoal instead of black. No visible weapon. No entourage. Only Dorothy at his side. The elevator to Park Syndicate headquarters still required biometric clearance. Junho placed his palm on the scanner. Denied. He expected that. Dorothy slid a flash drive into the maintenance port beneath the panel. 30 seconds. The doors unlocked. Junho glanced at her. You planned that? I plan everything. He almost smiled. The conference room. Choi Min-woo was mid-speech. Kyung-mi stood beside him in white, laughing, performing. Junho pushed the door open. No knock, just presence. The room froze. Silence doesn't echo. It suffocates. Choi's face drained first. Kyung-mi followed. You're supposed to be, she began. Dead. Junho finished calmly. He stepped forward. No cane, no tremor, just controlled movement. The lie worked. Psychology mattered. Choi's mind was racing, trying to calculate what had gone wrong. Security should have intercepted. Informants should have warned. They didn't, because half of them weren't his anymore. Gentlemen, Junho addressed the room. Good to see familiar faces. 6 men stood, the ones who had quietly realigned, not in panic, in recognition. Choi recovered first. You don't have authority here. Junho tilted his head slightly. Authority isn't given. It's recognized. Dorothy placed a folder on the table. Federal financial records. She said evenly. Wire transfers. Offshore accounts. Attempted murder coordination logs. Choi lunged for the documents. Too late. Detective Kim entered with officers behind him. Right on schedule. Choi Min-woo, Kim announced. You are under investigation. The room exploded into whispers. Kyung-mi snapped. You set this up. Yes, Junho replied. You tried to kill me. Her composure cracked. You were weak. You would have destroyed everything. He walked toward her slowly. I was arrogant, he said quietly. That's different. Choi tried to run. Junho stepped in front of him. No cane, no support. Choi hesitated. That half-second was enough. Police restrained him. Kyung-mi screamed. Junho didn't flinch. Not from rage. From clarity. The war was over before it began. Because he didn't come with violence. He came with proof. Aftermath. When the police left, the remaining lieutenants stayed seated, waiting. Junho didn't sit at the head immediately. He walked the perimeter first, studied faces, measured loyalty. For months ago, he said evenly, every one of you calculated survival. No one denied it. I don't blame you. That shocked him. You chose stability. He stopped at the head chair. But understand something. He didn't sit yet. Fear built this empire. Fear also made it collapse. He finally took his seat. We rebuild differently. Dorothy sat beside him. Not behind. Not standing. Beside. Sunwoo, the oldest lieutenant, spoke first. You would spare us? Junho looked at him calmly. Yes. Confusion spread. Why? Another asked. Because loyalty built on terror disappears when terror weakens. He folded his hands. From today forward, profit sharing increases. Violence becomes last resort. Political leverage replaces intimidation. Murmurs. Uncertainty. He expected it. You want old part, Junho? He asked quietly. Then you should have kept Choi. Silence again. Different this time. Measured. Sunwoo bowed slightly. We follow you. One by one, the others did the same. Not out of fear. Out of recognition. Power had shifted. Private confrontation. Kyung-mi requested one final meeting before transfer. Junho allowed it. Dorothy insisted on being present. The interrogation room was sterile. Kyung-mi looked smaller, without jewelry, without stage lighting. You always needed control, she said bitterly. You couldn't handle weakness. Junho considered that. You're right. She looked surprised. I couldn't. She leaned forward. So what changed? He glanced at Dorothy. Someone stayed. Kyung-mi followed his gaze. Realization flickered. You fell in love, she whispered. Jun-ho didn't deny it. Her lips trembled. You ruined everything for that. No, he replied calmly. I saved everything because of that. She looked at him like she didn't recognize him. Maybe she didn't. The shift in reputation. News spread fast. Headlines. Former syndicate leader returns after attempted assassination. Financial corruption exposed. Internal restructuring announced. But what surprised Seoul wasn't a return. It was a restraint. No public executions. No disappearances. No retaliation killings. Just quiet restructuring. Quiet control. Jun-ho began shifting operations toward legitimate logistics, security consulting, and import infrastructure. Illegal elements were compartmentalized and minimized, not erased, but disciplined. The underground respected one thing above all, stability, and Jun-ho offered it, the emotional threshold. It happened at 2 a.m., back in his restored office. Dorothy stood near the window. You didn't destroy them, she said softly. I could have. I know. He walked toward her, full stride. No cane, no hesitation. They expected rage, he said. I gave them law. She turned. You're not who you were. No. He stepped closer. I don't want to be. There was no dramatic build, no hesitation. He kissed her, not gentle, not restrained, but certain. She kissed him back without stepping away. When they parted, she rested her forehead against his. You almost died, she whispered. So, did you? And we're still here. Yes. He took her hand. I don't want this to end when the war ends. It won't. The final symbol. 1 week later, Jun-ho visited Gangnam Bridge. Alone, he stood exactly where his car had gone over. Wind loud, water dark. He looked down. He could have died. Should have. Instead, he had been buried and grown roots. Dorothy approached quietly. You don't owe this place anything, she said. He looked at her. I owe it perspective. He turned away from the edge. No hesitation. No tremor. He walked back toward the city. Toward future. Not revenge. Not dominance. But choice. 3 weeks after Choi's arrest, the organization looked calm. Too calm. Revenue normalized. Operations restructured. Political contact stabilized under new agreements. Public perception improved. But Jun-ho knew something most leaders learn too late. Silence inside an empire is not peace. It is calculation. He stood in the executive office, overlooking Gangnam. No cane, no tremor, but his lower back still burned after long days. Nerve regeneration came with cost. Dorothy entered without knocking. You're favoring your right leg again. I'm fine. She stepped closer, arms folded. You're lying. He exhaled. Pain is manageable. Good, she replied, because today won't be. He turned slightly. What happened? She placed a tablet on his desk. A leaked document. Internal. Profit redistribution records. Someone inside had forwarded it to an anonymous financial blog. The headline was subtle but dangerous. Former crime syndicate leader reallocates funds under new ethical model. Ethical. Mocking. The implication was weakness. Jun-ho studied it. Who leaked it? Unknown. Encrypted routing. He didn't react outwardly, but his mind was already narrowing suspects. Someone testing response. He said quietly, Yes. Dorothy watched him carefully. You're not going to overreact. He didn't answer. That was the first sign of tension. The fracture. The emergency meeting that night was deliberate. Jun-ho did not shout, did not threaten. He simply placed the tablet on the table. Someone here wants to measure my limits. Silence. He scanned faces, micro-expressions, shifting posture. Fear? Guilt? None obvious. We operate differently now, he continued evenly. That doesn't mean I lack consequences. He let that sit. Dorothy stood near the wall, observing, assessing, after dismissal. She closed the office door behind them. You didn't push hard enough. He turned slowly. You wanted me to accuse blindly? I wanted you to show them there's still a line. Jun-ho's jaw tightened. There is. Then show it. The air shifted. This wasn't strategy anymore. It was philosophy. You think mercy is weakness, he said. I think untested mercy invites betrayal. He stepped closer. I won't become who I was. And I'm not asking you to. She held his gaze. But evolution doesn't mean softness. He didn't respond. For the first time since Jeju, there was distance. The attempt. 2 nights later, Sunwoo disappeared. Not arrested. Not public. Just gone. Junho's phone rang at 3:14 a.m. A distorted voice. You changed too much. The line cut. Junho sat upright in bed instantly. Dorothy was already awake. Who? Internal. She moved to the safe drawer. Without hesitation. Weapon check. Security feed review. Nothing unusual. But Junho understood. The leak wasn't ego. It was resistance. Someone believed the new structure threatened old profit flows, which meant they would try to force his hand. The political strike, the attack, didn't come with guns. It came through regulation. A surprise financial audit initiated through a political contact once loyal to Choi. Dorothy read the notification twice. They're targeting legitimacy, she said. If we fail compliance, everything freezes. Junho leaned back. Who initiated it? She named a senator. Old ally. Bought years ago. He switched sides, she added. Junho nodded slowly. Of course he did. Dorothy crossed her arms. This is exactly what I meant. He looked at her. You want retaliation. I want balance. He moved closer. And if balance requires ruin? She didn't flinch. Then ruin. Silence again. He stepped away first. Not in anger. In reflection. The physical setback. Stress is cruel to healing bodies. During a late-night meeting, Junho's left leg buckled unexpectedly. No one saw, except Dorothy. She caught him before impact, back in private office. She closed the blinds. You're pushing too fast. I'm not. You're in pain. Pain doesn't scare me. It should. Her voice softened. You're not invincible. He looked at her sharply. I never was. She stepped closer. You don't have to prove strength every second. He inhaled slowly. You think I'm proving something? Yes. To who? To yourself. That landed. Harder than accusation. He sat down quietly. For once, he didn't argue. The reveal. The traitor revealed himself accidentally. Mid-level operations manager. Young. Ambitious. Financially strained. Dorothy found it first. An irregular wire tied to the senator's consulting firm. She placed the evidence on Junho's desk. His name is Jihan. Junho studied the file. He's desperate. Yes. Does he know what he triggered? Probably not. Junho closed the folder. Bring him in. The choice. Jihan stood trembling in the office. No bravado. No weapon. Just fear. I didn't mean for it to escalate, he stammered. They promised ability. Junho studied him. You thought I was weak. No. You did. Silence. Dorothy watched carefully. This was the moment. The old Junho would have ended him. Publicly. Brutally. As warning. The new Junho walked slowly around him. Measured. You sold internal structure for personal security. Jihan's hands shook. Yes. Do you regret it? Yes. Or do you regret getting caught? The boy broke. I was scared. Junho stopped walking. So was I. He remembered hospital ceiling tiles. Empty phone screen. Morphine button. He looked at Dorothy briefly. Then back at Jihan. You're suspended. Shock. Not executed. Not beaten. You will repay damages through service. Jihan stared. You're not. No. Junho's voice lowered slightly. But understand something. He leaned closer. I am capable. Jihan swallowed hard. Yes, sir. When the door closed, Dorothy studied him. You just made a statement. Yes. You sure it was the right one? He met her eyes. If I punish fear with fear, nothing changes. She exhaled slowly. Then let's hope they understand that. That night, tension surfaced. You hesitated, she said quietly. In the office. I calculated. No. She looked at him directly. You wanted my approval. The accusation stunned him. That's not true. It is. He stepped forward. You think I lead for you? I think you care what I think. He didn't deny that. That's not weakness, she said softly. It's human. He felt the crack widen, because she was right, and that frightened him. The turning point. The audit intensified. Pressure mounted. Junho made a decision. He called the senator personally, offered him a choice. Withdraw the audit quietly, or face exposure of offshore bribes from 3 years prior. Silence on the other end. Then agreement. The audit vanished within 48 hours. Dorothy looked at him afterward. That was ruthless. Yes, you said you were changing. I am. He stepped closer. I didn't destroy him. I leveraged him. She nodded slowly. That's balance. The tension eased, but something deeper shifted. Junho was learning something dangerous. He could be both, merciful and lethal, depending on necessity. The private moment. Late evening. Office lights dim. Dorothy stood near the desk. You scared me when your leg buckled, she admitted quietly. He moved closer. It won't stop me. I know. She touched his lower back gently. You're not alone anymore. He placed his hand over hers. That's what scares me. She looked up. Why? Because losing you would hurt more than losing my empire. Silence. Then she kissed him. Slow, certain, not survival, not adrenaline. Choice. When she pulled back, she rested her forehead against his chest. You won't lose me. He wrapped his arms around her. And for once, power didn't feel like control. It felt like connection. Closing scene, the new standard. 1 month later, internal culture shifted. Less fear, more structure. Profit stabilized under legal expansion. Underground respect returned. But differently. Junho stood before the entire upper circle. You follow me, he said calmly. Not because you're afraid. He looked around. But because you believe in the system we're building. No one challenged it. Because strength radiated from him now. Not violence. Conviction. He had been buried, broken, abandoned, and returned. Not as the same king, but as something more dangerous. A man who understood loss and chose restraint. It began as a whisper, then a headline, then a coordinated smear. Syndicate leader controlled by foreign woman. The article was subtle, almost academic, but the implication was clear. Dorothy, her presence, her influence, her race, her background, her lack of traditional alignment. The underground didn't care about morality, but it cared about perception. And someone was attacking perception. Junho read the article twice. His expression never changed. Dorothy stood across the office. They're not targeting you, she said quietly. They're targeting me. Yes. The piece questioned her credentials, her history, her legitimacy in Korean corporate culture. It suggested she was manipulating him, softening him, weakening the organization. Classic destabilization strategy. Who wrote it? Junho asked. Front author is independent, Dorothy replied. But funding traces back to Busousan. Junho's eyes darkened slightly. Busousan meant one thing. The Han Consortium. Old rival syndicate. Quiet. Strategic. Patient. They've been watching, he said, and now they're testing. The internal ripple. Within 72 hours, whispers moved through lower ranks. Nothing overt, but doubt spreads fastest in silence. Sunwoo requested a private meeting. There's talk, he admitted carefully, about perception. Junho listened without interruption. They say you're influenced. Junho leaned back slowly. And you? Sunwoo held his gaze. I say leadership changed, not weakened. Junho nodded once. Then repeat that. Sunwoo bowed. I will. When he left, Dorothy exhaled quietly. You don't have to protect me. I'm not, Junho replied. I'm protecting structure. But he knew that wasn't fully true. The offer, the Han Consortium didn't escalate publicly. They sent messenger. A private invitation. Neutral ground. Busousan. Dorothy frowned immediately. It's a trap. Probably. And you're going? Yes. She stepped closer. Then I'm coming. He didn't argue. Busousan. The test of composure. The meeting room overlooked the harbor. Large windows. Controlled environment. Han Jae-suk entered without hurry. Older, measured, dangerous in a quieter way than Choi had ever been. You look healthier than I expected, Han observed. Recovery motivates. Junho replied evenly. Han's gaze flicked briefly to Dorothy. So this is the strategist. Junho did not react. State your purpose, he said calmly. Han smiled faintly. You destabilize the region. Correction, Junho replied. I stabilized it. Under a softer model. Junho's eyes sharpened. You mistake restraint for softness. Han leaned back. Public perception doesn't. There it was. The leverage. Your ranks question your direction. Han continued. Remove her. He gestured subtly toward Dorothy. And perception restores. The room went still. Junho did not look at Dorothy. He did not need to. You're offering alliance in exchange for my partner. Yes. Junho stood slowly. No tremor. No hesitation. You misunderstand me. Han's smile faded slightly. I lost everything once. Junho continued quietly. Because I misjudged loyalty. He stepped closer to the table. I won't repeat that. Han studied him carefully. You're choosing risk. I'm choosing strength. Silence. Long. Then Han nodded slightly. Then we'll see if your strength survives pressure. The meeting ended without agreement, but the war was now declared. The public attack. 2 weeks later, the smear escalated. A stage scandal. Fabricated financial conflict of interest involving Dorothy's name and a logistics contract. Mainstream media picked it up. Now it wasn't whispers. It was televised debate. Dorothy watched the news silently. They're trying to force distance, she said calmly. Junho shut the television off. They won't succeed. You don't know that. He stepped toward her. Yes, I do. She held his gaze. They'll escalate. I know. And if escalation becomes violent? He didn't answer immediately, because he already felt it coming. It happened in daylight. A black SUV ran a red light at full speed. Junho saw it first. He shoved Dorothy aside. The vehicle clipped him instead. Not a full hit, but enough to send him crashing against pavement. Pain detonated through his spine. White flash. Screeching metal. Gunshots followed. Security responded instantly. The SUV fled. Dorothy was on her knees beside him within seconds. Stay with me? His vision blurred. He forced focus. I'm fine. You're bleeding. He looked down. Surface wounds. Not spinal. Not catastrophic. But close. Too close. He pushed himself up before medics arrived. Refused stretcher. Stood. Publicly. On shaking legs. Cameras were already filming. He straightened his jacket. Walked. Every step agony. But he walked. The response. That night, Junho didn't sleep. Not from pain. From calculation. Dorothy sat across from him. You don't need to respond with war, she said quietly. He looked at her. They tried to kill you. They tried to scare us. They hit you. She moved closer. And you're still standing. He clenched his jaw. This was the line. Restraint had limits. Han Consortium needed correction, but not annihilation. Correction. The next morning, Junho activated something he had not used since before the accident. Financial freeze protocols. Strategic exposure of illicit trade routes tied to Han's offshore shipping. Not public. Private. Enough to destabilize. Enough to signal capability. Within 48 hours, Han's secondary operation stalled. A message was delivered without violence. Balance restored. Han responded with a single encrypted line. Understood. The escalation stopped. The quiet aftermath. Junho stood alone in the executive office later that night. His back burned. His legs trembled faintly when no one watched. Dorothy entered quietly. You're hurt more than you're showing. I've been hurt worse. She stepped close. That's not the point. He looked at her. Then what is... She touched his chest lightly. You don't have to prove you can survive every attack. He exhaled slowly. I almost lost you. She shook her head gently. You saved me. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket. Small velvet box. She froze. You weren't supposed to see that yet, he said quietly. Her breath caught slightly. Junho lowered himself to one knee. It hurt. He didn't care. He looked up at her. I built empires on fear, he said softly. I lost everything because I misunderstood loyalty. He swallowed. You stayed when no one else did. His voice steadied. You challenged me, changed me, fought beside me. He opened the box. Simple ring. No spectacle, just certainty. Dorothy Scott, will you build something permanent with me? Her eyes shimmered, not dramatic tears. Real ones. You're asking me to marry a man who nearly died twice this year, she whispered. Yes. She smiled. Good. He blinked. Good. I don't want safe. I want real. She knelt in front of him instead. And yes. He laughed softly, for the first time in years. Not calculated, not controlled, just joy. He slid the ring onto her finger. She kissed him before he could stand. And for once, the king didn't think about power. He thought about future, the public statement. 1 week later, Junho stood before press, Dorothy beside him, hand in hand. We lead together, he said calmly, professionally and personally. No apology, no defensiveness, just clarity. Public reaction split. But internally, the whispering stopped. Strength had been demonstrated, not by domination, but by refusal to fracture. Closing scene. That night, Junho stood at Gangnam Bridge again, Dorothy beside him. He looked down at the dark water. I almost disappeared here. She squeezed his hand. But you didn't. He looked at her. No. He turned away from the edge and walked forward, not as the king they tried to bury, but as the man who chose to rise. The wedding was deliberately small. No spectacle, no press, no politicians, just inner circle, and those who had earned their place. Junho stood in a tailored charcoal suit. No cane, no hesitation. His spine still carried scars, but they no longer defined him. Dorothy walked toward him in ivory, not elaborate, not performative, elegant, grounded, unshakable. When she reached him, she didn't smile for the room. She looked only at him. You ready? She asked softly. For once, he replied, yes. They didn't exchange vows about power or survival. They spoke about choice, about staying, about building. When he placed the ring on her finger, he understood something fully for the first time in his life. Control can be taken. Money can vanish. Fear can shift. But chosen loyalty, that is built and protected. The unexpected return. 3 weeks into married life, Junho received a message he didn't expect. Kwon Jisung, alive, out on bail, requesting a meeting. Dorothy read the message twice. You don't owe him anything. I know. Then why meet him? Junho stared at the screen. Because unresolved ghosts don't stay buried. The meeting. Kwon looked thinner, less certain. Gone was the polished confidence of a man who believed he'd chosen the winning side. I made a mistake, Kwon said quietly. You made a calculation. Junho corrected. Yes. Silence. I thought you were finished. So did everyone. Kwon swallowed. They're offering me protection if I testify against you. Junho didn't flinch. Will you? Kwon hesitated. I don't want to. Not wanting isn't loyalty. Kwon looked at him directly. You've changed. Yes. I don't understand it. Junho leaned back. When I lost my legs, I lost fear. Kwon frowned. That doesn't make sense. I realized something. Junho continued calmly. I built everything assuming control was permanent. He paused. It wasn't. Silence. You want forgiveness? Junho asked. Kwon nodded faintly. You won't get trust back. I know, but you can earn neutrality. Kwon exhaled. That's more than I deserve. Yes. Jun-ho stood. Meeting over. No threats. No violence. Just boundary. Dorothy waited outside. You let him walk. Yes. You're certain? Jun-ho nodded slowly. I don't need to prove dominance anymore. The final internal test. 2 months later, internal revenue surged. Legitimate operations expanded rapidly. With growth came temptation. An upper-level operations chief approached Jun-ho privately. We can increase margins 22%. The man suggested quietly. How? Jun-ho asked. Reintroduce controlled intimidation in secondary districts. There it was. The old path. Easy, efficient, profitable. Jun-ho leaned back slowly. No. The man blinked. We'd remain careful. No. Silence thickened. Is this about optics? The man pressed. No. Jun-ho's voice remained calm. It's about foundation. He stood. When I couldn't walk, no one feared me. He stepped closer. But someone stayed. The man understood. Fear does not build permanence. Trust does. The proposal was withdrawn. And something shifted internally. Not through violence. Through consistency. The hospital returned. Jun-ho returned to the hospital 6 months after discharge. Not as a patient. As a donor. He walked the same corridor. Passed the same ceiling tiles. Entered the same VIP wing. The doctor who delivered his diagnosis nearly dropped his clipboard. Mr. Park. Jun-ho smiled faintly. You were wrong. The doctor blinked. Medically, you shouldn't be walking. Jun-ho nodded. I know. He placed a check on the desk. For spinal research and rehabilitation funding. The doctor stared. Why? Jun-ho glanced at Dorothy. Because not everyone has someone stubborn enough to drag them back. He walked out without waiting for gratitude. Closure did not require applause. His mother, he hadn't seen her since the accident. She lived quietly in Taegu. When he entered her home, she looked at him for a long time. You're walking, she said softly. Yes. She nodded once. I prayed. He smiled faintly. So, did someone else. She noticed Dorothy immediately. Your wife? Yes. His mother studied Dorothy carefully, then bowed slightly. Thank you. Dorothy bowed back. No, ma'am. He did the hard part. His mother shook her head gently. No. She looked at her son. He never knew how to be alone. Jun-ho absorbed that quietly. Maybe she was right. The last threat, one final attempt surfaced. A rogue faction tied loosely to Han Consortium. Young, impatient, trying to prove strength. They vandalized the distribution center. Left a message. Testing. Jun-ho stood in the damaged warehouse. Security awaiting instruction. Dorothy beside him. Response. Sun-woo asked. Jun-ho looked at the broken crates. The graffiti. The attempt to provoke. Find their leader, he said calmly. Bring him. No execution. No retaliation. Just confrontation. The young man arrived trembling. He expected violence. Jun-ho did not raise his voice. You want recognition, he said. The man said nothing. You think destruction earns it. Silence. Jun-ho stepped closer. I was you once. The young man looked confused. You don't want war. Jun-ho continued. You want importance. He handed him a card. Earn it properly. No threat, just path. The rogue faction dissolved within weeks. Absorbed. Redirected. The bridge, full circle. 1 year after the accident, Jun-ho returned to Gangnam Bridge again. This time with no symbolism. No dramatic pause. Just quiet acknowledgement. Dorothy leaned against the railing. You come here often, she teased lightly. It reminds me of pain. No. He looked at the water. Of survival. She took his hand. You don't need to prove it anymore. He smiled softly. I'm not. He turned away from the edge and walked without hesitation, without fear. The final image. Late evening. Executive office. City glowing below. Jun-ho stood without the headchair theatrics. No throne posture. Just presence. Dorothy entered. You're thinking. Yes. About what? He looked at the skyline. I spent my life trying to be feared. He turned toward her, but being trusted. He smiled slightly. That's heavier. She walked to him. And worth it. She wrapped her arms around him. No war, no sirens, no betrayal, just quiet power. Epilogue. They tried to bury him. They broke his spine, stole his empire, stripped his title. But what they didn't understand, you don't bury a man who knows how to rebuild. Park Junho returned, not as the king he was, but as the man he chose to become. No crown, no fear, just legacy, and a woman who stayed when the world left.